Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Steiner here at the Real News Network. At the Real News, we're working as a media partner with a number of organizations, including Food and Water Watch, the Democracy Collaborative, the Poor People's Campaign, the Center for Biological Diversity, among others, to bring U.S. senators and grassroots activists who are on the front lines together to address utility cutoffs that are happening during this massive unemployment that we're facing now because of the COVID pandemic. Today, we're joined by the Reverend Dallas Conyers, a community health activist. Her work is to help people to be able to live out their creation purpose with a healthy body in a healthy environment. She's currently the program director for the South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light, and the Reverend Michael Malcolm, who is founder and executive director of the People's Justice Council and executive director of Alabama's Interfaith Power and Light, based out of Birmingham, Alabama. And we're joined also by the United States Senator from Oregon, Jeff Merkley. And folks, welcome. Good to have you with us, Senator Merkley.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Senator Jeff Merkley. In the wake of the passing of civil rights legends Representative John Lewis, who is lying in state in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol right now, and Reverend C.T. Vivian, and in the wake of the senseless deaths of George Floyd and so many countless others, there couldn't be a more important moment than now to discuss the need for utility justice for all families during this public health and economic crisis. It's shameful that families across the country are experiencing, or at threat of experiencing, the cutoff of their electricity, their water, and their broadband because they're out of work and can't afford to pay. We are in the greatest employment crisis of our generation. And communities of color, Black Americans, Brown Americans, Native Americans, and others are disproportionately bearing the brunt of it. By the end of this week, the end of July, 90% of states will no longer have any legal moratoria or shutoffs. So that means only 5 states will provide any protection. We know that this crisis didn't create this disparity, but it has accentuated it. Even before the pandemic, we know that half of Black families experience energy insecurity compared to a much smaller percentage of white families. People of color are also disproportionately more likely not to have broadband at home. They have broadband at every income level at a lower rate than white families. Water shutoffs disproportionately impact communities of color, with majority Black communities in particular facing the most unaffordable water bills. This has to end. That's why I've introduced legislation to enact a nationwide moratorium on water, electricity, and broadband shutoffs. The House passed this in the HEROES Act. Now the Senate has a moral obligation to do the same. To unpack that moral obligation, I'm delighted to be speaking with Reverend Dallas Conyers from South Carolina and Reverend Michael Malcolm from Alabama. They bring enormous experience on these issues. And I would just like to ask both of them, as we have just lost 2 civil rights icons, Representative John Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian, as your thoughts on why a moratorium on utility shutoffs is a racial and economic justice issue.
I guess I'll start with that.
Great.
And I would say that for us, it's about security and ensuring that people are protected. And so that is of the utmost importance as faith leaders to ensure that those that we serve have the proper protection and are able to live a healthy and clean life. And when we don't have these securities in place, it's then time for us to step up and stand in and speak on these issues and address these from a humanitarian standpoint.
Thank you, Reverend. And let's turn to Reverend Conyers.
Yeah, so when we think about water, power, and broadband, we're thinking about essential needs at this point in our time, and essential needs at this point in our civilization. We're no longer living in a time period where people can just individually go find a water source that would be clean and healthy and just go get their own water. We're no longer living in a place in time where people can go days without being informed COVID is just way too prevalent for us. We need to be able to be informed. We need to be able to access work if we have the opportunity to work from home. Our children need to be able to access their schools, because many states are making it mandatory for schools to go back in personal session. But because so many children don't have access to broadband, it's not something that people can really fight against, because if they stay out of session and go virtual, they might not still be able to access the work. We're living in a time where if you're without power, how are you keeping your food safe? It's not safe to go to the supermarket every day. So you need your refrigerators. We're seeing monumental heat waves going across this country. We need air conditioners and we need fans. This is a health issue. And because people of low income highly intersect with people of the Black and brown race, this is a racial and social justice issue, because that's who's being largely impacted. So water, power, and broadband are racial justice needs right now that need to be addressed.
So, Reverend, are you hearing about this issue just in an academic way? Are you hearing from people in your congregation, people in your community who are sharing stories about how these cutoffs are accentuating the challenges they're facing?
I just recently did an interview with a community member here in Birmingham, Alabama, and she told me a story of how she was helping some people in Montgomery to deliver their medicine and groceries for them. It was some older people. And she said oftentimes she would have to ride back home in silence because of the stories that she'd been told about how some of the older people would have to either choose between medicine, between food, or between even paying their rent. And so, yes, it's in a very real sense, we're experiencing this on the ground. And that was before COVID, and that was before unemployment. Now, just this Saturday, we spent a day of action serving the community of Jefferson County, Alabama. And this community is predominantly Black, with 8% poverty. And that's, again, not even factoring in the recent unemployments with COVID. And so in an extremely real sense, it's very real on the ground here. And I can even say from my studies, it's very real throughout the South.
Well, I must say, I'm hearing the stories from my community. I live in a blue-collar community on the east edge of an urban area of Portland. And particularly, I'm hearing from parents really worried about broadband and the difficulty of how they're going to deal with their kids getting an education, and how that might exacerbate the educational difference between families that, well, have a place for their kids to study and have a computer and have broadband, and the families that don't. Also, a lot of worry about how childcare plays into that, and going back to work, and that complexity. But that whole broadband it's not just the kids either. It's people looking for work, and people trying to stay in touch with their parents who might be in a senior center and have been walled off, or their children in another state, or who knows what. I mean, it's really accentuates it. And then thought, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Senator. Let's look at it even further. The fact that most businesses are shut down now, and therefore most therapy practices are shut down. Many of the private medical facilities are shut down. Your urgent cares, you have to have an appointment in order to be seen because of COVID. And a lot of these places require people to have broadband, require them to have internet access in order to make these appointments.
Yes.
Not just that. What about the people that don't have transportation, who would normally have their things delivered? If they don't have access to information, if they don't have access to access, then what do we do with them? For me, it's really about those who are forgotten. And if COVID has taught us nothing, it should have taught us that we can ill afford to forget anybody in community.
And I want to highlight the individual need right now. Many people of lower incomes are choosing to use these cloth masks. Already, we know that cloth masks are not as effective in preventing transmission of COVID, but I've seen a 5-pack of so-called surgical masks costing almost $8. So $8 for a 5-pack that most families can go through in half a day. So this is already becoming an issue. So now we have families choosing to make and use their own cloth masks, but now they can't afford to pay for their water. So how are they supposed to wash these already ineffective cloth masks and keep them from giving themselves this disease because they are unable to continue washing their masks? Mm-hmm. So we're already seeing an economic disparity in being able to take care of oneself and not buy proper materials. But also we're seeing this danger of people literally being unable to take even minimum precautions. So the individual, the family, the community is highly, highly at risk. We're not just talking washing hands. We're talking literally putting a piece of cloth to your face every day.
So the House has passed a moratorium on utility shutoffs, on electricity, on water, on broadband. What difference would it make for the Senate to pass the same moratorium and send it on to be signed into law?
It becomes a mental health thing. I mean, just the weight lifting off of people's minds and hearts that this will not be something that they have to worry about. Stress is a silent killer. We're talking about multiple systemic impacts within the body, your ability to work, your ability to look for work, your ability to express kindness and patience during this time would be impacted in a positive way by the passing of this law. The general morale of this country would go through the roof, and it would finally give us some good press in the international society as a whole, because we're not looking too good right now in the face of this COVID epidemic and how we're handling it.
You know, so often the people who serve in Congress come from gated communities, wealthy communities. They aren't surrounded by people who are as challenged by the impact of the unemployment and the disease. And I'm just stressing that we need to rebuild this economy, not from Wall Street down, not from the rich down, not from the corporate executives down, but from the families up. I can think of little that is as important as making sure people have utilities in terms of the foundation for rebuilding from the base up. Certainly unemployment insurance and creating jobs is important, but this national moratorium on utility shutoffs, I think, would make a big difference. Reverend Malcolm, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so I think that we're still talking about protection. And what this signals is that our government is standing up to protect the people. The reality is, if we look at the stimuluses that have been passed, we have clearly seen that we have come up short as far as it or as far as it concerns protecting the people. Now we have a perfect opportunity to signal to the population that has elected us or has elected government we can signal to them that we are protecting them. And so I think we shouldn't allow for this moment to pass and we not see what good we can actually do and who could truly benefit. One of the things that really is problematic in all of this is that we politicize protection. And the reality is all of us can benefit from these protections. When it comes down to COVID, if we could stay in place and we could ensure that we are wearing our masks, washing our hands, maintaining our social distance, we can make this thing manageable. But if you force people to go back to work because they have no other choice in their living, then they don't have any protection. And we have not, or you all have not done your job.
Well, I like the way you frame that as really this is important for the people. In theory, we have government of, by, and for the people, as President Lincoln put it, but too often the bills end up looking like government by and for the powerful. So let's fight together to create the pressure on Congress to include this moratorium in this upcoming bill number 4, COVID number 4 bill that will be passed in the next 2 weeks. And we just can't let it get passed without this being included in it. I just invite you to share any closing thoughts that you would all like to add.
We forget that the common person, so to speak, is absolutely essential for the health of this country. At the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, we thought we had finally seen that importance when we realized that those people that we used to ignore, your checkout people, your cashiers, your restaurant workers, those people we said, why do you need higher pay? All of a sudden they're needed, and we saw them until we realized that we can still separate ourselves from them and their concerns. However, they are the people that make this country work. And if we do not protect them, as Reverend Malcolm has been repeated, we will see a fall down. We will see a shutdown that we can't come back from. These people are paid and they are working because their jobs are essential to our survival. And if you get rid of the base of your structure, the entirety will fall. So all of these people that still have to go out every day do not need to be stressed about whether they will be able to wash their hands and their faces, whether they will be able to access power and water to clean their clothes so that they're not further, bringing this contagion to their families. And they need broadband because, quite frankly, most of these people work multiple jobs and they need to be able to find those jobs. They need to be able to search the internet. Their children need to be able to go online and learn and just grow. Our country needs to remember that this whole top-down economics has always been an idea. I have yet to see it work, right? It was introduced in the 60s. We've been told that this trickle-down economy is going to work, but we've not seen it work yet. And I want to introduce the fact that every time before the 60s, where we did from the ground up forward model of economy, such as the New Deal, we saw a boom in the economy, in the health of America, and the abilities and productivity of Americans go up. So let us go back to taking care of the people first and let businesses and the rich do what they can do, which is take care of themselves because they have the money.
Thank you so much. And Representative Malcolm, did you want to share any last thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I stand on the shoulders of greatness. And one of the shoulders, or some of the shoulders that I stand on, we have seen pass in the last week. But they left us an example to do the right thing. They marched to do the right thing. They fought to do the right thing. They took abuse to do the right thing. And it was all to protect the people. Now is our time. COVID has presented us with the perfect opportunity. It has exposed the ills of this society and presented us the perfect opportunity to do the right thing. I don't want to leave saying anything. I simply want to challenge those who are making decisions right now to do the right thing and protect the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Thank you to both of you. I'm thinking now about the phrase that Representative John Lewis used when he said, we need good trouble. And what does that look like right now? It means advocacy inside this building by members of the House and members of the Senate, but it also means we need enormous pressure from outside the building, from the coalition to end these utility cutoffs, to create a moratorium on these cutoffs. Every House member, every senator needs to hear about it. They need to be asked about it by their local press because people are calling the press and saying, well, why haven't you addressed this topic? They need to get phone calls into their office. They need to see in their emails that people care about it. If they're holding any kind of a town hall, I encourage people to get on that Zoom room town hall and weigh in on it. We need the pressure from outside and inside. That's how we move this building to make sure we have this passed to provide a government of, by, and for the people. Let's get it done in this next 2 weeks, and thank you all very much.